just like to focus on the gospel this weekend. And so just to get the setting correct, when Jesus is with his disciples, he's at the Last Supper. So he's washed their feet, and now this is part of a long section of the Gospel of John, which we call the farewell discourse. It's a way for Jesus to kind of give his final words to his followers before his death and resurrection. So, of course, as with any last will and testament, like all the gospel, it's really, really important. And so he wants them to remain connected to him. And he's saying that's possible. Now, this interesting thing is, in a sense, we're in the very same place, because the Last Supper is where the Mass comes from. And so Jesus is speaking to us this morning just as real as that Last Supper the night before he was crucified. He's here. He's risen from the dead. So he's speaking to us just as directly as he did that evening. And we're sharing that very same meal. So he's two things right in the beginning. He says the Father takes away the branches that don't bear fruit. Let's just push that to the side and not worry about that. Because I think we're the other part. But those who do bear fruit, he's going to prune so that they bear more fruit. You wouldn't be here if you weren't already bearing fruit. So what's this pruning about? So let's look about how we are bearing fruit. In that financial report is some of the evidence. You look at that bottom section about our twin parish, the amount of money and support that we've given to our twin parish is phenomenal. And people going down there and their lives are being changed. That's a way that people have been pruned and bear more and more fruit. And we'll look at Parish Families Against Hunger, the thousands of meals that were packaged a few weeks ago, and all the money and the activities and the community building that led up to that is bearing fruit. And sometimes doing those very things helps prune us and gets us more excited to bear more fruit. Because we see what fruits are there, and that kind of just gives us more energy to keep going. So we can go on and on about the fruit that we're bearing. So what about this pruning again? Pruning is like I did it when I was growing up, our apple trees and cherry trees, and I know vine growers do the very same practice that they did in the time of Jesus. Every year there's all these new shoots that come out of a tree or a vine, and they're not all going to bear the kind of fruit that you want. There's too many of them. Some are too small, or they're in the shade, and so they're not going to produce fruit. So you trim a whole bunch of those off so that the sap can be directed to the better branches or the better stems, and then you have better fruit. So the pruning in us is meant to help us to continue to get that sap going in the right direction. What is the sap? It's the Holy Spirit. It's the very Spirit of God that has been given to us in our baptism. It's there, and it's like sometimes we have a lid on it and it could just blow. So we got to direct that Holy Spirit. And so the question of pruning is, where do we need to be pruned? And it's those things that keep us from being the best version of ourselves that we can be. Those things that keep us from becoming the saint that God is calling us to become and to be. What is holding us back and keeping that sap from flowing through us and bearing the greatest fruit possible? Now here's the danger. I can give you some examples, but it could be lots and lots of things. And so each of us have to kind of do our own little self-reflection on that. What's keeping and holding that sap back? And how do we need to prune that part of our life out? Sometimes it could be the very simplest things that we're just too busy. We've gotten ourselves into too much stuff, and so we can't kind of keep that sap flowing and bearing fruit in the right places. Or sometimes we're too focused on our work, or sometimes we're too focused on our leisure. Maybe sometimes we're too focused on material things. And it could be another types of things. It could be within inside of us that we have some kind of hurt that's going on that we can't let go. And we need to prune that away, because if we're carrying that hurt or resentment and those kinds of things, then the sap isn't flowing, and we're not going to bear as much fruit. So it could be all sorts of kinds of things that we might need to allow God to prune in order for us to bear more fruit. So some of the basic pruning tools are the sacraments. Sunday Mass is a great one. and like I say in the beginning, I've been doing that quite a bit, is when we come here, we're kind of reminded who we are and what we're about. And that's why it's so important to come to Sunday Mass, among many other things. But the Mass itself, we have that word that prunes us, as Jesus says in this very passage. We have his body and blood that nourishes us and strengthens us and reminds us that just as he died for us, we need to die for one another and to be of servants to others to produce new life. We have our personal prayer and meditation. We have the books that we've handed out over the past years that might help us to be pruned and kind of redirect our sap, our Holy Spirit. We have the mission that we had a few weeks ago as well. All of those things help prune us and they kind of enliven us to produce more and more fruit. And it's not just us individually, it has an effect on all of us. And it also has an effect on us when we don't allow God to prune. So let's just maybe today and throughout the week, just kind of not be afraid to say, God, where am I holding back? Where am I not letting that sap flow? Where am I not really allowing myself to be the best version of myself that I can be, to be that saint that God is calling me to be? And be not afraid to look at it.